we'll quickly look at the questions reviewing chapter 31 of 1 Samuel. We looked at Saul's last battle and his death, and it's in lesson the questions on lesson 10. Question 12 is where we left off in the question. It says, how did Israel fare in the war against the Philistines in chapter 31, 1 through 4? They were beaten, they fled. They were beaten and they fled from those that weren't killed, fled from the battlefield. So it went heavily against them. And who was killed of prominence in that particular battle?
Jonathan, Abinadab, and I don't know how to finish it.
Malchi Sua, I think there's something Shua. So the sons of Saul and Saul the king were killed. So question 14 says, how did Saul die? Was wounded by that was one where both answers were right. He was wounded by archers and he was about to die, but he ended up, or he probably would have died, but he ended up committing suicide. Thus, he fallen into the hands of the Philistines. Says, what became of his body?
His head was cut off and put in the temple of their idols and fastened his body to the wall of the
Shame. Shame. Yeah. So yeah, his their bodies were stripped and mutilated, beheaded. Then the bodies were nailed up to the wall of the city. Horrible fate for King Saul. Very dishonored. And then 16 says, why did the men of Jabesh Gilead rescue his body from Bathsheba?
They were in their attack at that time.
So right at the very beginning of his reign, one of his first acts was to rescue the city of Jabesh Gilead when Nahash the Ammonite had come up and surrounded them and said he was going to pluck out their right eye, and cut off their right hand. They sent for help. Saul rallied the nation and saved them, and they never forgot that favor that King Saul had done for them. So that brings us into 2 Samuel chapter 1. And in this, we spent the last part of our class last time looking at an introduction to 2 Samuel, some of the things that are found there. This book is about the life of David as king. We've seen his, the book of 1 Samuel told us the story of Samuel and how he rose to prominence and became a judge and a prophet. How his sons were so disappointing, and what happened to the house of Eli and at this downfall. And then Saul was anointed as the first king, because people asked for a king, and even though God warned them of all the consequences of having an earthly king, they wanted to have a king anyway. So Saul was anointed, and then he disobeyed the commandments of God. He had a good beginning, but then David came to be anointed by Samuel to be the next king, to take Saul's place. He never raised a hand against Saul or tried to do anything to take power for himself. He waited on the providence of God to bring him to the throne. But Saul saw all of the blessings that God gave to him and all of his success, and was jealous of David and thought surely David was the one that was going to take his place. And so he persecuted David and pursued him. And that was really the last part of the book of 1 Samuel. And then Saul was removed from being king. So now David is ready to come and take the throne. And we put up, some of this is speculation. Maybe a lot of it is speculation as far as the actual age that David was when these things happened. It's an estimate, it's some guesswork in a lot of these things. There are not a lot of exact dates in this 40-year reign of David and his 70-year life. But it's thought that he was born about 1040. He was anointed about 29, sometime around 11 or 12. He came to Saul's court and played the harp for him to soothe him. He fought against Goliath. Some people think that was sometime between 16 and 19 years old. He was in Saul's army and became a general and an armor bearer for the king around the age of 20. And then he had, after becoming the son-in-law of the king, he had to flee for his life when Saul was seeking to kill him around the age of 24. And then he was wandering and being pursued by Saul on all those different occasions. He spared Saul's life twice. And then finally he fled to the land of the Philistines and was in Achish's army there. And around the age of 28, he spent a couple of years there among the Philistines. And then these events that we're about to study happened about the age of 30. He becomes the king of Judah for 7.5 years. And then for 33 years, he's the king of all of Israel from the age of 37 on. And after he's conquered his enemies and had much success, he commits that sin with Bathsheba of adultery and murder. And of course, God said there were going to be a sword in his house, and there would be great trouble that was going to arise against him because of this sin that he committed. Even though God forgave him spiritually and in his soul, there's earthly consequences that come to those that commit major crimes. And they certainly came to David's house. They had the rebellion of his son Absalom about the age of 61. So about the year you think, well, maybe we start taking it easy at the end of your reign. David had to fight for his life at the end. And then Sheba also rebelled after that. So he had 2 different rebellions he had to put down. And then at the age of 70, he died. So it kind of gives you a rough outline of the life of David that we're going to study in this book. We mentioned you have parallel books about the monarchy of Israel. You have some unique material that's not paralleled anywhere else really in 1 Samuel, where you have the judgeship of Samuel and the reign of Saul. The death of Saul is mentioned in 1 Chronicles. And you have the genealogies, the death of Saul in chapter 10, and then the reign of David. So the last half of 1 Chronicles is parallel with 2 Samuel. Then you have 2 Chronicles, which deals, we can see parallel with 1 and 2 Kings. That you got 2 different accounts. In the books of 1 and 2 Kings, one of the main differences is you're dealing with Israel and Judah's kings in 1 and 2 Kings. In the book of Chronicles, they only focus on the kings that are the sons of David. So it gives you more material about the reign of the kings of Judah. So they do supplement each other and you get different material. There's a lot of emphasis on the temple and on the priesthood, as we mentioned last week in the book of 2 Chronicles that you get. So there are parallels there for you to study and to read that God has given us. You can read those in connection also with all the major and minor prophets that prophesied and tell you what king they reigned under or they prophesied under, that you can gain much insight into what was going on in those ancient times. So David is made king of Israel, 2 Samuel 1 through chapter 5 and verse 25. David receives the news about Saul's death in chapter 1 in verses 1 through 27. So he's 2 days back from that disaster that happened where his family was taken captive by the Amalekites when he was at Ziklag. And then he had to go on the mission with his men after God had told him he could win and bring them back. And he was able to strike the Amalekites and get his family back and all of that booty, and then sent the booty to all those different cities of Judah. So that's just happened. And then we're told, we have 2 books, 1 and 2 Samuel, but it's all one book. If you, as it's written, it just happens to fit on 2 scrolls. So they divided it right here. At some point, they decided right in the middle just to break it. It's not, the story is continuous. Now, it came about after the death of Saul, when David had returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites. nights. And David remained 2 days in Ziklag. And on the third day, behold, a man came out of the camp from Saul, and his clothes were torn, and dust was on his head. And it came about when he came to David that he fell to the ground and prostrated himself. So we have here this man coming to David, and he has come from the battlefield. He's going to bring the first word about what happened with the Philistines and Israel and Saul. In verse, he bows down and prostrates himself there. It's quite a mess, isn't it? Dust on his head, torn clothing. He's made this furious journey down there, 3 days journey to get down to where David is at and bring him news of the battle. And David said to him, how did things go? Please tell me. He said, the people had fled from the battle, and also many of the people have fallen and are dead. And Saul and Jonathan, his son, are dead also. So David said to the young man, who told him? How do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead? So this has to be very shocking news. That Israel's been defeated, the king is dead, his best friend Jonathan has been killed. Think about the shocking news. That all the army and the people have fled the battlefield. Total disaster has happened. How is it that you have such personal knowledge about the king and his son? And that's pretty detailed, that you have to be there, really, and see the body, right? To be able to know that that had happened. And so the man begins to explain at least what his claim is. We've already heard the true story given by inspiration about how Saul died. He killed himself, right? That's what happened. This guy's trying to ingratiate himself with the man he thinks is going to be the new king. So he makes up a story to tell as to how he came to have the crown and the bracelet of the king. It says, and the young man who told him said, by chance I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and behold, Saul was leaning on his spear, and behold, the chariots and the horsemen pursued him closely. And when he looked behind him and saw me, he called to me, and I said, here I am. And he said to me, who are you? And I answered him, I am an Amalekite. And then he said to me, please stand beside me and kill me, for agony has seized me, because my life still lingers in me. So I just happened to be there and happened to walk up on the scene at just the right time when Saul was leaning on his spear. Total accident that I was there. And the Philistines were in hot pursuit and about to close in on Saul. He's in great agony. And he called me over to himself and asked me to please kill him. So he says it's going to be a case of mercy killing, right? He was suffering. He couldn't kill himself. He wanted me to kill him. So I was there and just happened to have this opportunity to help the king out. You think that's helping somebody out? He obviously thinks David's going to like this story. He thinks he's going to get a reward for this story. That he killed the king that was pursuing David and chasing him all over. And now he's the one that's been able to kill him. And this is all a false story, trying to ingratiate himself. So I stood beside him and killed him, because I knew that he could not live after he had fallen. And I took the crown which was on his head and the bracelet which was on his arm, and I have brought them here to my Lord. So I said, then somehow he throws that in. He couldn't have lived. So it's not, killing him was not, I mean, he's going to die anyway. So I just hurried along, the inevitable thing that was going to happen here. And he got a lot of excuses in there as to why this certainly wouldn't be murder that he killed the king. And he says, I know that it was the king because I've got his crown, I took his bracelet off. I know you're the one that everybody talks about that ought to be king or is going to be king. So I brought it all to you. So he's already called David his Lord and bowed down with great humility in front of David, bowed down on the ground in front of him, called him Lord. And now I've brought these things to you so that you can know that truly the king is dead and Jonathan is dead. Well, I don't know what this man thought the reaction be. He must have thought he was going to be happy to get this report that his enemy was dead. Now David can become king. But it's not at all the reaction of David and his men. And David said to him, "How is it that you are not afraid to stretch out your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" I think maybe the man might have started thinking, this is not going the way I thought it was going to go. That's a rhetorical question, and I don't even think he was looking for an answer. It's like, how did you think you could do that? You would presume to kill God's anointed king? That's only God's prerogative to take somebody's life away like that. It's not your job. And he's been anointed by God, and you think you could lift up your hand? David called one of the young men and said, "Go cut him down." So he struck him, and he died. And David said to him, "Your blood is on your head, for your mouth has testified against you, saying, I have killed the Lord's anointed." I skipped over the reaction of David when he hears this story. In verse 11, it says, "Then David took hold of his clothes and tore them, and so also did all the men who were with him. And they mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and his son Jonathan, and for the people of the Lord and the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. And David said to the young man, who told him, Where are you from? And he answered, I am the son of an alien, an Amalekite." So David's reaction, along with all of his men that sympathize with him, is that they tear their robes as a sign that their heart is torn open because of what they've heard that's happened in Israel. Well, what do you feel like when Pearl Harbor happened? The World Trade Center buildings fell down. All of us feel like tearing our robes if that was our custom, saying what a horrible day. The Pentagon plane crashed into it. Another plane crashed out in Pennsylvania because the people were trying to take it back. How horrible. This is, the army's defeated. The king is dead. All of his sons are dead. And horrible news. And David and all of the people weep and fast until the end of the day. And then isn't it ironic that Saul got into problem because he wouldn't kill who? Who was it? He got sent on a mission, and he didn't fulfill the mission. Who were the people he was supposed to kill? Amalekite. Who is it that's telling the story? An Amalekite. That's something. So there's an Amalekite there when he's dead, takes his crown, takes it to David. Very ironic. Evidently, somebody that joined himself to the Israelites, maybe he was even fighting in the battle on the side of Israel and have to be on the battlefield. He certainly underestimated David's feelings still for Saul. Saul was the king of Israel, and he was a highly respected man, even though he'd done many evil things and chasing David, trying to kill him. He still respected him as the king, and certainly remembered many good things about Saul from the past in their close relationship to each other, and loved Jonathan. So how is it that you thought you could strike him down and kill him? So he doesn't justify him whatsoever when it comes to mercy killing or in any way harming the king. Might think about some lessons here. The man was put to death. It says, your blood be on your head, for your mouth has testified against you, saying, I have killed the Lord's anointed. It says, your blood's on your own head. You're dying for what you did. And you testified with your own mouth that you killed the king. So there's not any, you can't say, well, there wasn't justice or there was, he lied about it, but he's going to die for that lie. So talk about a plan backfiring on somebody to try to, get some high position or something. He must have sounded like a great plan when he was making it up in his head, but it ends up costing him his life. He dies for something he didn't actually do, but he said he did it. And he offered evidence that he did it, the crown and the bracelet. So you hear, several lessons that might be gained from this episode that's recorded here. First of all, the fact that Now, without David raising a hand against the king, Saul has fallen, and David is going to be able to come to the throne and begin to reign now at 30 years old. And it was all God's providence was going to bring this about. David believed that. God acts among men and that he would bring him to the throne. And David shows you how you ought to conduct yourself. If you believe that God works in your life, things work together for good, and he has purpose for each of us and for the church, how is it that we should wait on God's providence? Just sit back and do nothing? No, that's not how you wait on God to act. You do your part, and God helps you. And look how David has been involved in this holy cause for God. He's gathered together men around him. He has taken care of the people of Judah. He's protected them from their enemies. He's done many things to help smooth the way for God's providence to work. He's ready when the time comes to move back into Judah and take the crown. He hasn't wasted his time during that period of time. He's been preparing for God to open the door for him. We want to preach the gospel to everybody in town. We want to be able to see the gospel come back into season and be a popular thing and be able to do much good and save souls. Do we just pray to God to do it, or do we prepare for that door to get open so we can step through it by knowing the Bible, knowing the arguments that we need to have to convert the lost and bring people to repentance? You gotta do your part for God's providence to work. You gotta be ready to seize the opportunity when it comes. And David has done everything to prepare himself for this role that he's going to play. So he had faith in God. And God doesn't slumber or sleep, but he's also ready for action. While he operated, he always did everything based on the highest principles, didn't he? He didn't have malice in his heart towards Saul or anybody else. He was trying to do God's will and follow the principles of God's word. And all of that time he was in the wilderness, that was his effort and desire. While we're waiting on God to help us, we got to do the same thing, right? Act in the same noble way he did. And God will help us when the time comes. And you have here the sin of this Amalekite. Certainly we should abstain from every form of evil or all appearance of evil. This guy actually brought it on himself, right? Exactly. Telling people I killed the king. Look what it led to in his case. He had this selfish scheme that he'd come up with and acted with all this fake sympathy. I was just trying to help the king out of his agony when I killed him. And he gave this excessive homage to David when he came to him, falling down on the ground in front of him, and thought that this lie was going to bring him great reward. And he totally miscalculated because he thought in his worldly-minded way that everybody else thinks like he does. I killed the guy that was in your way. Now you can step up. But David is a spiritual-minded man. He doesn't judge things the way this Amalekite judges things. He sees this as murder, that he's taken into his hand what only God's got the right to take. He didn't have the right to take Saul's life. It wasn't his prerogative or place to do that. And so we can see in this mercy killing, and we're going to take it in our own hands to alleviate a person of suffering or whatever. That's not in our power. We're not to shed people's blood. We're not to take people's lives. Their lives are sacred. And it's only those that, where it's judicially decided because they forfeited the right to live, that we have the right to take someone's life, or in time of war, or in self-defense, but not in a case like this. And David certainly didn't approve of it. He didn't think it was right at all. And we see capital punishment. He orders one of the young men to come and strike him down and kill him. Says, your blood is on your own head. This is the punishment you deserve. Back to the time of Noah. If a man sheds a man's blood, his blood shall be shed. That was God's law when they came out of the ark. And it was repeated in the law of Moses. It's repeated in the New Testament. But the government has the right to the sword and capital punishment. And it is something that, what are some of the things that that we've studied capital punishment in sermons. We studied Romans 13 and we studied the book of Romans where it talks about capital punishment. What are some of the things that capital punishment proves about human beings? I mean, what is one of the things it tells you about a human being? If you're going to be put to death if you kill somebody, what does that tell you?
The value of the human body to God and to us.
The penalties to fit the crime, right? Well, that's about as big a crime as you can get. You're going to lose your life. Human life is made in the image of God. If you kill somebody, you're going to be killed. It gives dignity to human beings, right? It allows you to go down the street, and if it's carried out consistently, and people know that's going to be a sure, swift penalty, they're going to leave people alone. You're not going to go around killing people, because you know surely that your blood's going to be on your own head, and people are going to put you to death. People don't fear that too much today, do they? They think they can get away with it. It's certainly a deterrent, and God set it up as a deterrent. How many repeat offenders do you have when you put them to death? They're not going to go out and repeat that crime, are they? That happens now. They get out of prison, they go kill people again. They kill people. They kill the guards in the prison. You know, it just goes. We think we're smarter than God, but God eliminates a lot of murder with the death penalty. There's one person who's getting treated severely, so everybody else can be benefited, right? So that everybody else can have dignity and not have to be afraid that somebody's going to take their life, because they should be afraid of that penalty that's going to be there. And so there are many positive reasons for why there should be capital punishment. It does show the sacredness of life. It does protect the innocent. It does deter crime. And it keeps people from repeating crime. So it's a shame that it's not carried out as consistently and regularly as it should be. Then David writes a song of the bow. And this is a very interesting song that is set forth here. It's been quoted at thousands upon thousands of funerals. It shows you something about the power of David's words and how he could write a song. He was the sweet psalmist of Israel. Talk about a man of many talents, David. I mean, he was some kind of wonderful human being. I mean, he was a leader of people from the time he was a teenager. He was a general. So you write him there with Alexander the Great or whoever you might think of as a general. But as a songwriter, who's written a songbook like the Book of Psalms? You know, that people have based so many songs in our songbook are based on things David wrote and the thoughts that are in those songs. And then he wrote songs of a secular nature like this one. This one doesn't mention the name of God. So it's not a psalm and it's not a hymn. It's just a martial song, a military song of a lament for heroes that have died in battle. And David wrote that kind of song too that has affected us. Then David chanted with his lament over Saul and Jonathan his son. And he told them to teach the sons of Judah the song of the bow. Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher. And the book of Jasher, we mentioned it when we studied the book of Joshua. It's mentioned in Chronicles as a book, a collection of national songs about battles and heroes of Israel. We don't have that book. We just have a few little samples that some of the Bible writers quoted that book. But here's a case where David wrote this secular song. When they put the book of Samuel together and put it down, they included the song as what David was singing and taught all the people to learn this song. And it's called the Song of the Bow. And you think about Jonathan. Jonathan had a bow, right? He was out there shooting his bow to give signals to David. And he was a great warrior with that bow. And evidently the people of Benjamin were especially well trained with the bow. And that's the tribe Saul is from. So that's the instrument of war, especially they were connected with. So it's the Song of the Bow that is mentioned here. And as you look at this psalm, as you break it down, it shows Hebrew poetry and the way in which they would rhyme the thoughts and the words, not the sound of the words, but the thoughts in each line would rhyme with each other. They need to be contrast or parallel with each other as you go through the song. We have songs a lot of times that put the emphasis just on the rhyming part at the end, and maybe the music that goes along with the song or whatever, but their emphasis is on the words and rhyming the thoughts in the words and the meanings of those words. And you see that here in this very ancient song that David has written forth. It says, I skipped a part here. Let's look at verse 19. It says, "Your beauty, O Israel, is slain on your high places. How have the mighty fallen?" So he begins the song by, talking about the beauty and the mighty. And you think about those warriors, the king's house, that have been killed there on the mountain, and what a sad day that was for Israel to see on the mountain, the army slain and the heroes struck down. And how has these mighty fallen? They've done so many wonderful things and won so many battles in the past, and that they have fallen down. And he is lamenting this great loss. And he prays against the enemies that are celebrating the fall of the army of Israel and the death of the king. And Jonathan says, "Tell it not in Gath, proclaim it not in the streets of Ascalon. O daughters of the Philistines, or the daughters of Philistines will rejoice, and the daughters of the uncircumcised will exult." So David doesn't want any of this to be heard among the people of the Philistines and the enemies of the people of God, that they would be able to celebrate this victory that is won. So you kind of have a prayer there against these enemies and them being able to celebrate this great downfall. But we think the same thing, that we wouldn't want a story told about the terrible disaster that happened in New York City back in 9/11. So people would be jumping up and down and rejoicing in these foreign countries, those things that happened. Very, very sad day. We don't want the enemies to have that ability to gloat. Verse 21, "O Mount Gilboa, let not dew or rain be on you, nor fields of offerings. For there the shield of the mighty was defiled, and the shield of Saul was anointed with oil." So it's kind of pronounces a curse on this location of Mount Gilboa, that it always be associated with this disaster that happened there. Which is like, think about Waterloo. That place is attached to the fall of Napoleon and the loss of his empire and all that. Is Waterloo. That's the name. Gilboa, David says, let it have the same kind of name associated with it. That's the place where the kingdom of Israel was defeated. And these mighty ones were struck down there. Their shields that had won so many victories before was defiled. Evidently, he wants no crops even to grow there that somebody would bring as an offering at the temple, from that mountain. But it always be associated with this disaster that's there. Cursed be that place. And then he celebrates the virtues of the fallen. From the blood of the slain and from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan did not turn back, and the sword of Saul did not return empty. But he celebrates their military victories that they have won in the past and their deeds of valor that they have performed. So can you learn from this that it's appropriate and right to have funerals and to have celebrations for soldiers that have fallen, and to think about their mighty deeds they did in the past before they were struck down, so on? David singing this, God approves of it. He's not ever anywhere condemned this kind of song or this kind of celebration about. They weren't perfect people. Certainly Saul wasn't spiritually, but the deeds that they do for your country, those are worth celebrating. The things that they do, extraordinary, just in the physical sense in this world, are worth remembering at a funeral. And that's what David does. He says they stood up and fought against and were always courageous and never turned back. Saul had won many victories before he lost this battle. Saul and Jonathan, beloved and pleasant in their life. So isn't it good to think about the good things? Maybe when somebody dies, you don't have to bring up all the things they did wrong at a funeral, do you? You bring up the things they did right and the good things that we would remember kindly. That's what he does with Saul. He shows this generous spirit, David does. He's forgot about chasing him around the wilderness all the times he threw the spear at him. He's thinking about the good times that he had with Saul and the good things about Saul when he was in his right mind, and how beloved and pleasant these people were in their life and in their death. They were not parted. So Jonathan stood by his father's side all the way to the end, in spite of disagreements they had about David and so on. They were still close to one another. And he describes how much power they had as warriors and how he remembers them as they were swifter than eagles and they were stronger than lions. When we think about the beauty and all, didn't it say Saul was handsome and taller than anybody else, and he was like Rock Hudson or something, right? I mean, that's kind of what you picture Saul. Some Hollywood, that kind of good looks is what he had. And in that day, so here is the mighty of the mighty are the ones that have been struck down. It says in the list of gifts that he brought to the nation. They remember the good things that he did for the nation of Israel. O daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothed you luxuriously in scarlet, who put ornaments of gold on your apparel. They were just a loose confederation of tribes. They were being dominated by the Philistines until Saul came to power. And Saul won a lot of battles and brought back a lot of booty from different places and made the country rich. So he brought in a lot of luxuries that they didn't have before. How have the mighty fallen in the midst of the battle? Jonathan is slain on your high places. So finally, he commemorates the love he had for his friend Jonathan, his best friend that loved him better than anyone. Says, I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. You have been very pleasant to me. Your love to me is more wonderful than the love of me. You might remember back was when David came back from killing Goliath. Is when Jonathan, had all that admiration for David, and his soul cleaved to David because of the faith he had and the victory he had won. He supported him even though it meant he wouldn't be the king, that David was going to be king. He was still his best friend. When David was down and out there in the wilderness, Jonathan's the one that came out to him and built him up in the Lord, that he was surely going to be king. They had not only this friendship, they had a covenant with each other, that they were going to protect one another's families and take care of one another. So they were, he had a greater love for him than for even any woman that he had a relationship with, any of his wives. It was his best friend that he had. It says, how have the mighty fallen and the weapons of war perished? So, great song that is included. It shows you something about how to praise people. I'd like to say it's been quoted. How have the mighty fallen has been quoted thousands of times. When some great person has died, people read this passage and apply it to that warrior, that president, general, king, or whoever that has fallen. Any other thoughts on chapter 1 of 2 Samuel? One thing you can see, there's some good in most men. There's some good things you can say, even of people that have made serious mistakes and maybe haven't lived the type of life towards God that they ought to live. There's still some good things about them that you can say. There's still some positive things that they have done. And David mentions those things, right? He mentions the good things they have done that are right. So then David is going to begin his rule in chapter 2. And he anointed the king over the land of Judah. And David's rule is over Judah. They are in the southern part of Israel. And the tribe of Benjamin north is the tribes of Israel. The other tribes are going to be under Saul's son, Ishbosheth, and he's going to rule over that territory for a period of time. But for 7.5 years here, David will be king. So in chapter 2, verses 1 through 7, you have David receiving the crown. It says, then it came about afterward that David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I go up to one of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said to him, go up. So David said, where shall I go up? And he said, to Hebron. So David went up there with his 2 wives also, Ahinoam and the Jezreelitess, and Abigail, the widow of Nabal the Carmelite. And David brought up his men who were with him, each with his household. And they lived in the cities of Hebron. And the men of Judah came there and anointed David king over the house of Judah. And they told David, saying, it was the men of Jabesh who buried Saul. And David sent messengers to the men of Jabesh Gilead, and said to them, may you be blessed of the Lord, because you have shown this kindness to Saul your Lord, and have buried him. Now may the Lord show loving kindness and truth to you, and I also will show this goodness to you, because you have done this thing. Now therefore, let your hands be strong and be valiant, for Saul your Lord is dead, and also the house of Judah has anointed me king over them. So David gets word from God. This is God's will that he go up now to take the throne and to be made king. And he goes to Hebron, that ancient city, probably the most ancient city of Judah and Israel. That's where Abraham had lived. It's where Abraham bought the cave. To bury his family in is at Hebron. Was captured originally by Caleb when they came into the land. So very famous city with other minor cities around it. So we'll come back and look at this, the beginning of David's reign next time. A little bit. Or, well, I think we have singing next week, and then week after that.